Hello and welcome to the first edition of Chris Mix Tricks. Today we are going to focus on how and why building a template in your D.A.W. is a good thing. Whether either tracking or mixing, it is very important to keep everything clear and concise. Having regions or clips of audio that are not named properly or given a colour so that we know it belongs to a group or set can become very confusing and delays our ability to focus on being creative. I find the best way to keep the arrangement page neat and organised is to put tracks in folders. Now this should be possible in most D.A.Ws. I use Studio One, but you should get the idea and transfer it to your own D.A.W. In Studio One, you need to press the plus sign, which is up here, and once you do so, a menu appears for adding tracks. So you will first of all need to type in the type of track that you are going to use. And in this case, we've got samples here, but as you can see on the left-hand side, wherever any of these folders are, they've been named appropriately. Next, you will need to enter the count box and enter the number of tracks that you want within the folder. In this case we've got 12, you can put as many as you like. And next door to it is a little checkbox, and you should be checking this if you're using Studio One or a relative function within your own D.A.W. This will pack all the tracks into the folder for you. After that, we have the audio box. Now, in the audio box here, I've selected audio for samples, but it could also be instruments. Now, instrument tracks in Studio One are actually MIDI tracks, so it's just their way of naming MIDI within Studio One. And then below that, we can pick a color for our section. So if you look along here, the bass, for instance, has red, keys has light blue, guitars green, and so forth. We can pick whichever color we want in Studio One by pressing on this little box here and then going ahead and picking the color that you want. These are stereo here in the box below, the format box. You need to go ahead and pick whichever you like. With samples, you could probably go either way. I tend to stick to stereo, and you can always change them within the box. So if I could give you a quick example here. Actually, I'll do that in a moment once I've come out of this. The output obviously needs to go to whichever output is going to. In this case, I've got the main output, the 2-bus, and I'm not going to OK that because I've got it all built already in this template, but this is just to show you how it's done. If I now just show you here, I'll open up the bass folder. As you can see, there are 2 tracks within the bass folder here. They're named appropriately, bass 1, bass 2. That can be changed. Just double click in there and change the name if you wish. Also, this little box here, this one circle denotes mono. If you want to change it to stereo, all you have to do is click on it, and it now becomes input left and right, which is obviously stereo. One black circle, one white circle next to each other. I'll switch that back to mono because usually it's going to be a mono file for bass sitting in the center of the mix, especially if it's a bass guitar. Right, now moving on from that, to continue to do this, you basically you want to make as many folders and as many tracks as you want. In this case, got bass folder, keys folder, guitars, strings, in case there's any strings, samples, of which there are a lot these days, depending on what style of music you're producing or mixing, and vocals. Lots of other things could be added to that. It's totally down to your own preference and specifications. You want to make as many type of instrument tracks and folders as you want within your template, giving them all different colors so each of them stand out from each other. As you can see here, when they're being tracked or mixed, they will take on these colors. So you'll actually see them across the timeline in the arrange page in that particular color. It's especially handy because you can just tell which section is which at a glance, and it keeps things very organized. After this, you will need to add a bus for each set of folder tracks. In Studio One, you will need to click on the rectangular box next to the folder sign and click on Add Bus Channel. So if we go here, this is the rectangular box and this is the folder track. So if we click on this, and this is in Studio One again, in your D.A.W it may be different. As you can see, these are all the different buses that have been selected, but if you want to add a bus to a folder, you just click on Add Bus Channel, and then the appropriate name will come up. The name that is at the top of the folder will come up within the routing for the bus. And as you can see, that has been done all the way down. And I'll just take you through this section here. All the buses in my template, and again, this is personal preference, I like to keep them all in one section. You may be different. You may want to keep them at the end of the section of where the individual channels are added on at the end, but I prefer to have them at the very end of the template. These are all buses. Now in Studio One, buses are denoted by a fork looking sign in the bottom right hand corner, whereas you have an audio looking sign for audio tracks, and for instrument tracks you have 3 little bars here. Actually they look like piano keys at a second glance. So that's how you tell the difference in Studio One, and again in your D.A.W it will be different, no doubt. Once you've added the channels, a bus will be assigned to those tracks and they will be routed to the buses. And as you can see, I've also added 3 extra bus channels, and they are effects. Now, any effects put on any of the channels here within this within the song will be routed to the effects channels, to the effects bus, excuse me. It's a convenient way of keeping them out of the way of maybe interfering with tracks in a way that you don't want, and also you can process them separately to other buses that will be doing processing for their own tracks, such as vocals, strings, samples, bass. These will be processed differently, and that can make a big difference, and is a good way of keeping things again neat and tidy and organised. The other two that I have drums. Drums are here. I tend to use Superior Drummer if I don't have a drummer. If I don't have drum tracks being sent to me, and if I'm producing myself and mixing, I will probably send them out, bounce them out to audio, and then send them to this drum bus here. One thing I will say about Superior Drummer is that it's a great program, and also the tracks are dry. They're not processed within the program itself. You can process within the program itself, but basically, if you bounce out, it's the actual microphones are dry there, and then you can process within Studio One or your D.A.W. of choice. The other two buses that I have added on are one for music. Now, this is again personal choice. I like doing this because I can get, if you look at the top of these bus sections here, some of them say submix, and they're being routed to the submix, which is this N channel here. But some of them say music. Now, I've got strings, samples, bass, keys, and guitars all going to music, and that means I can process them differently to the vocals, the drums, and the effects, and they are all being routed to the submix, and then everything through the music and the whole song will go through the submix before it gets to the stereo out. And that is, I never touch the stereo out volume, the slider. If I'm going to do anything with automation for the whole song, I will do it within the submix slider, and that is one of the main reasons why I have a submix bus. I hope that you've gained something from watching this tutorial today. It is a very basic but also very important subject, I feel. A little motto I use always comes in handy. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So, on that note, take care, folks, and happy mixing.